next session is going to be in two parts. First of all, we're going to hear from two inspirational speakers giving presentations about the CEF and the ISA programs. We've heard a bit about them over recent days, the last couple of days, but we're going to hear about the solutions, the maturity, the deployment. And then in the second part, we're going to go on to a discussion. So please, you as the audience, we do want your questions. Use the tab on the right-hand side of your screen to send us your questions to our speakers. Even comments, we're happy to include those as well. We know you've been very active over the last 2 days, so please keep that going for day 3. And with that, I'm going to introduce the next session, which is called, What Have We Been Doing on Innovation and Emerging Technologies? Well, what have we been doing? To tell us, we have Georges Lobo, Project Officer at the Interoperability Unit in DIGIT in the European Commission. Georges holds a PhD in particle physics from the University of Paris Sud. So we're going to hopefully hear some scientific backgrounds on this. We also have Pietro Ulrich, who's Project Officer at the Digital Economy in the JRC, the Joint Research Centre. So first of all, Georges, the floor is yours. Give us your presentation, and we'll come back to you afterwards, hopefully with lots of comments and questions.
Thank you, Jen. So, as you said, the title of this presentation is What Have We Been Doing in Innovative Technologies? And as you can see, it's a pretty long title. And this is why I put a subtitle which is a bit the answer, which is a lot, so to simplify. The first thing I will try to talk is the articulation as well we had in our different programs. You know that the Commission is mostly a funding factory, and in some sense, so we have been managing and creating solutions from different with different type of funding programs. And here it's just to make the title shorter, I use acronyms. You know that the Commission, we love acronyms. And but it translates from research and innovations to building blocks, and this is what is about what we have been doing in the both program we are talking about these 3 days. And here it's to illustrate, so here's an example of the programs and where I've been as well myself involved during my career. So we start on the left-hand side, we have the research and innovation program, the competitiveness and innovation, the framework research program. In the middle, we have ISA², which has a particular role in this, and the CEF building digital Connecting Europe facility. And there it was more about deployment. So it was to deploy mature solutions. And here I just gave some examples of the history and to illustrate what we've been doing in the articulation of this program. If I take STORK, which is a program from a framework research program that gave ultimately with various iterations became the EID building block. Another example, which was close to me, and it's one of the recent building blocks. There was a project starting in 2012 in the CIP program, which was taken over by Fireware during the FP7 and Horizon, and then became the building block. And to talk also about another building block, its translation, which was initiated, was matured in the ISA, the first ISA program, the successor, the predecessor of the ISA². So here to summarize is that we have these 3 types, I would say, families of funding. We have the research and innovation, where people are trying. Sometimes there are dead ends, that's research. I mean, we have to live with that. So we have a lot of development. When the best solutions, we were trying in ISA² as well to mature them. So it's still about experimentation, but I would say closer to maturing the solution. And when they are ready, they were taken over. Some of them were taken over by the Connected Europe facility. So the title was referring to emerging technology. Of course, there was, about what I said, there was nothing about AI, blockchain, all these technologies we're talking about today. So what I've been doing, and especially addressing what has been discussing by Rainer in the introduction on the digital transformation of government with support innovation. So as I say, we have been doing here, I will focus more on ISA², and we have been doing quite a lot on this, using this emerging technology. There were 3 types of activities. We have general landscaping and studies. This was part, I would say, and here are the activities, normal activities on every topic for ISA². We have some focus studies and piloting activities. On general landscaping, and here, if you're interested after, you have the presentation, you have the link, everything is clickable, so you will get directly to the documents and the pages. And we have been doing some studies, so there was a multi-dimensional framework assessing the innovative potential of these technologies. We have also studies on digital transformation of government and the Innovative Publics Observatory, which will be the next presentation done by my colleague Pietro Ulrich, which I would say is the largest initiative we are currently running under innovative public services. We have been also doing more focused studies, so looking at particular technologies. So here I could mention, and again, you have the links. There will have been one on blockchain. We have also been doing landscaping studies. There have been some more specific studies on using chatbot for public service portals. And there is currently ongoing, and there is also, it has been published as a solution, an API framework for government, the API study done as well by our colleagues from the JRC, the Joint Research Center. And the third part, which I would say it's also in the DNA of ISA², it's the piloting activities, and it bridges as well with the second part of this session. So I will talk first about big data for public administrations. This was part of the beginning of the ISA² program, and this was used to create the BDTI building block. We have also others that I mentioned here with the links in the financial sector. There are ongoing pilots on the AI use in competition domain, which is mostly about sorting, trying to identify things in large sets of documents. And last but not least, and it will give the bridge to the next second part, is the blockchain pilots, which were started in 2018, which were sort of less the blueprints for the EBSI, so the European Blockchain Service Infrastructure, that will be the second half of this meeting. So this is the end of my presentation. If you have any question, they are welcome. This we intend to continue in the Digital Europe program that we'll be talking this afternoon. And if you have any link questions, please do not hesitate to contact me. So I will give the floor now to maybe my colleague Pietro Ulrich.
Well, before we go to Pietro, I'm just going to have a quick, because there has been a question, and I think you can probably deal with it quite quickly. What would your advice be for a country that has a state-of-the-art PKI or EID, but hasn't really managed to get the transformation going to put it to real use? That's a question from our audience. So, yeah, I know it's a big question on advice, but
yeah, it's a big question. I'm not sure because it was asked during Rainer's presentation, so maybe it was addressed more to Rainer. I mean, what we're saying is that we are trying to support. As far as possible, we are trying to also identify guidelines, and I would say maybe the way that you would try to look is what with the innovative public service, as I say, we are these piloting activities which are essential. We are building blocks, but we are also giving a lot of advice on organizational and as well with the part that will be presented by Peter will be essential also to support, to transform, to support the transformation, giving the best practices, maybe the worst practices as well, which is as important as the best one, to how to digitally transform. And this is something that as well I've been also noticing is that it's look at what the others are doing, look at the mistakes and try to replicate and reuse what exists and try to try to replicate what has
we heard over the last couple of days people saying, don't reinvent the wheel. So I think
exactly.
it's absolutely true here. As you say, let us now go over to Peter. Thank you very much. Peter from the Joint Research Center. Tell us a little bit more. You've been set up very nicely there by Georges. So let's have your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. So after George has given you a broad overview of what has happened in the field of emerging technologies, I'm going to zoom in on one particular initiative that we at the Joint Research Center are working on together with the colleagues at DG Digit, and that is the Innovative Public Services Observatory. Now, before I start my presentation, a short disclaimer. What I'm going to present to you is all work in progress. So it might be that in what I present to you today, in a couple of weeks or months, might have changed. This is just the nature of an agile process. This potential change includes the working title that we're using at the moment, which is Innovative Public Services Observatory, or IPSO. Potentially, next time we speak, this will be called differently. Suggestions are welcome. Next slide, please. So in my short presentation, I will talk about a couple of things. I will tell you why we're working on this, what we're trying to achieve with it, how we think it could be achieved, and then lastly also about what your role in this whole process could be. Next slide, please. So let's get started. So why are we building an observatory for monitoring the use of emerging technologies in innovative public services? Next slide. I think we can all agree that there's a lot of buzz and excitement about the use of emerging technologies such as AI and blockchain and others. And within all that buzz, there are different storylines and different voices. Some think that using these technologies will revolutionize everything and help us make a better world. Others think that using artificial intelligence will lead to the end of democracy. And all these stories and narratives, they also have an effect on how the public sector is trying to use these technologies. But what we believe the public sector needs is actually evidence beyond all that buzz and beyond that excitement. We believe that the public sector needs evidence that helps us understand what works and what doesn't work. What are the challenges, the opportunities, and the risks involved in using some of these technologies? And finally, also simply how to do it, right? And this is where the initiative that we're building, the observatory, comes in. Next slide, please. So what are we trying to achieve with this initiative? On the next slide. Thank you. The main aim of what we're doing is we want to create a knowledge base of technology-enabled innovative public services. But creating a knowledge base obviously is not an end in itself. We're doing this because we're convinced that it will help us design better policies to support the uptake of emerging technologies in public services, and when necessary, also to regulate them. We're convinced that this will help with the uptake and replication of best practice examples in the public sector and in public services. And lastly, with this knowledge base, we want to contribute to an informed public debate about the use of these emerging technologies in public services. Next slide, please. So how is this going to look? How do we think with this initiative we can achieve these goals? Next slide, please. First of all, and this is not a surprise, there will be an online platform. There will be an online platform that will allow us to showcase all the cases that we collect, that people can look at and learn from. Such an online platform can also give access to knowledge and guidelines that will be created as part of this initiative, and it can also be a starting point for interaction and exchange. As I said before, this is all work in progress, but we have already created a prototype of this platform for which you can see a screenshot on the right, and also the link how to get there. If you follow this link and you get to our prototype platform, you will, for example, be able to browse through the catalog of almost 400 cases and projects of how public services are using AI, blockchain, Internet of Things, APIs, and so on. I encourage you to go check it out. So this is the online interface. Next slide, please. But obviously, for this interface to be able to tell you interesting things, a lot more has to happen in the background. There has to be data management that goes and finds and identifies and describes interesting cases that others can learn from. There should be accompanying research that looks at all this wealth of data and identifies trends and developments. There has to be knowledge production that maybe takes all the findings of all this data collection and research and transforms it into easily accessible and easily understandable products for all kinds of audiences. And the last point, and I think this is actually the most important point, this initiative will be successful if there is an active community behind it that uses this initiative and that engages with it. And that brings me to your role in it. Next slide, please. So what is your role in all that development? On the next slide. Thank you. If you want to become active in supporting the use of emerging technologies in public services, in order to contribute to creating public value and in order to contribute to the public good in Europe, whether you do that through our initiative or through other possibilities, we want to encourage you to share your knowledge and experience so others can learn from it. We want to encourage you to also share your solutions and your tools and things that you've developed, be it a framework, a piece of code, a software. We just heard it. We don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time. So please share what you have so others may use it. We will also encourage you to share your success stories so others can get inspired by them and also become active, but at the same time also talk about your failures and the lessons that you learned from them so that others can avoid making the same mistakes over and over again. Next slide, please. If you think that what I just presented, this initiative, is something that you're interested in, then please do get in touch. You can find us on JoinUp. You can go visit our prototype platform and look at our preliminary results. But probably the easiest way, just send an email to myself and George, and we'd love to hear from you and we'd love to start a conversation with you about this. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. A great presentation, really, really understandable, really engaging. I really liked it. And also really timely because, of course, yesterday the European Commission put out its AI regulation strategy, something I don't know if everybody pored over it last night, but that's what I spent my evening doing. So we got a lot of interesting proposals there from a very risk-based point of view and a bit more sort of broadly in the commercial sense. But I think possibly it even follows over into what are the risks and the harms of AI and using it responsibly, even within public services and public administration. So thank you very much for your presentation. We've no questions yet, but that doesn't mean we might not have them coming up soon, because the second part of this section is we have 3 more speakers for you, and we're going to do a Q&A, bit of a discussion afterwards. But of course, if you wish, you can come back with questions for George and Peter at that point as well. So with that, our next 3 speakers are Pēteris Zilgalvis, Nena Dokuzov, and Pietro Marchionni. We're going to start with Pēteris, who is Mr. Blockchain in DG Connect at the European Commission. So you're going to tell us why blockchain can shape the future of digital governments and how Europe has decided to join forces. Pēteris, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for the nice introduction, though. Hopefully I'm a little bit more and a little bit less than just Mr. Blockchain. But I mean, we think that blockchain can help shape the future of digital governments. And Europe has joined forces to benefit from the possibilities that this technology, I think in conjunction with other technologies like artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things and big data can offer. We sometimes, and other people call it a convergent stack. Blockchain alone can do quite a few things, but together with the other technologies, it really can be a part of the digital transformation of Europe. And so if we look at the sphere where governmental entities are issuers of documents that are evidence through many parts of our life, these documents are or will become digital. It's more convenient for citizens or businesses to access these essential bits of information, especially in cross-border contexts when they're studying, working, or living across their own countries or abroad. Blockchain and other distributed ledger technologies now act as trust technologies for data in many parts of the economy and society. The technologies make it possible to have large groups of people or organizations who do not know each other or trust each other to collectively agree on and permanently record information without the need of a third-party authority. By creating trust in data in ways that were not possible before, blockchain has the potential to revolutionize how we share information and carry out transactions online. As governments invest in ensuring the integrity and authenticity of digital documents, digital certificates, and digital cards in order to combat fraud, to utilize blockchain technologies is offering a convenient and cost-effective way of verifying the authenticity and integrity of the information. If we look at the classic way of solving the problem of ensuring that information in a digital format can be trusted, the whole point of the classic pattern is to get the information directly from the authentic source, a population register, a land register, a business register, in real time, either by the citizen or by the verifier of the information. The pattern creates and maintains a whole number of players, intermediaries that ensure that the exchange of information can be trusted. The government portal, the exchange platform, the networks become even more complex when it becomes a cross-border data exchange question, because then you have the need for interoperability. Blockchain changes this pattern because it is a distributed ledger, not an information exchange protocol. Blockchain can act as a point of truth that supports the verification of the entities involved in the transaction and the authenticity of information without requiring the real-time access to the information source. This is done thanks to cryptography, in particular, thanks to hashing. It converts any input, text, image, etc., into a fixed length code that can be easily verified, and a new document format known as verifiable credentials, which no longer limits citizens to sharing data, to all the data in the document, but it allows them to choose what you want to share in a format known as a verifiable presentation. The sharing of personal data is avoided unless this is done through advanced anonymization approaches. No personal data, in our viewpoint, should be kept on the blockchain. Verifiable credentials and personal information are kept in an app known as the wallet that can be issued for used for all kinds of verification processes. By changing the way citizens, businesses, and public administration share information and trust each other, blockchain can help governments simplify multi-party and verification processes. Europe's ambition is to set a gold standard for blockchain technologies. To do this, we are implementing a strong regulatory and policy framework that supports sustainable blockchain innovation. Yesterday, we adopted the climate law that commits to Europe being climate neutral in a binding instrument by 2050, and cutting the amount of greenhouse emissions 55% from 1990 levels by 2030. So we have to take this seriously in relation to ICT and blockchain as well. And we're also supporting the startup and scale-up ecosystems. A related instrument that we have is the Startup Nation Standard of Excellence, which was signed by 26 ministers of EU member states and also Iceland 2 weeks ago in Lisbon, Portugal, supporting blockchain technologies, but also all others. Europe's also playing a leading role in supporting and connecting global expertise in blockchain through the European Blockchain Observatory and Forum, and is supporting public-private partnerships such as the International Association of Trusted Blockchain Applications, where we are co-chairing right now its governmental advisory board. Public administrations across Europe play a trailblazing role in implementing blockchain technologies. Since 2019, 29 countries, all EU member states, Norway and Liechtenstein, and the European Commission have joined forces to form the EU Blockchain Partnership. working together in a regulatory sandbox and a budding legal framework to implement this. It's a joint initiative, and we are starting with use cases, self-sovereign identity, diplomas, audit document certification, and finally, RegTech and regulatory reporting. It's the first EU-wide blockchain infrastructure driven by the public sector in full respect of EU values and regulations. And we think we can say in all honesty that it is a first in the world. So we're very proud of it, but a lot of work remains to be done. And my co-panelists will, I think, be chipping in on some of the things that we have done and still will need to do with this initiative.
Thank you very much. I must say, I'm glad you raised the question of climate and you know, the EU Green Deal, because it is something that comes up in terms of questions about blockchain and the wider ICT requirements and energy question very, very often. So hopefully we've headed off that particular line of inquiry and we can get into the nitty gritty, which is what I'm going to turn over now to Pietro Marchionni, who is the EBSI Technical Group Convenor. How does the European Blockchain Services Infrastructure, EBSI, work? And also tell us, I mean, what does your job involve? I think people are probably quite interested to know. I'm not sure if I know what you do day to day. So do tell us, please. The floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Pietro Marchionni. I'm the convener, as you said, of the European Blockchain Service Infrastructure, that EBSI means. That means my main task at the moment is to coordinate the 28 member state efforts to make this infrastructure the real glue among the member states, primarily for public services, and secondly, hopefully in future to open to the rest of the market. So you may understand that a joint effort means a joint communication among the member states and a joint vision. So the aim of the European Blockchain Partnership through EBSI has always been to allow member states to cooperate together to reach a common effort. So what is EBSI? And one of the main questions I always raise about blockchain is it like energy consuming? It is not. What's going on there? So EBSI is a blockchain. So more generally, we would call it a distributed ledger. And the blockchain means you have nodes, so services across all the member states and European Commission that will operate this blockchain. How to operate this blockchain? It's always following EU vision and EU regulation. Now, this means that from one side, as has been pointed out by my previous colleagues, our blockchain is not energy consuming as the normal, let's say, some other blockchains. We cannot say all other blockchains, but some other blockchains, because it is what we call a public permission blockchain. Means it's public, so it's accessible for everybody. It's permission because you need some permission to run some actions within the blockchain. And the model that has been used to set up this blockchain is a model that is really energy-wise. So we have a very low energy consumption, and tests has been run for the last year to prove that and to guarantee that the vision, EU vision on energy, let's say saving and consumption is achieved also through this blockchain technology. Secondly, as we said, the technology involves the co-participation, so the cooperation of every member state, and not as a generic member state, but as entities within the member states. So each member state has multiple entities that run nodes for the European blockchain service infrastructure. This allows to build the glue that we were talking about before, so that we can communicate through this great technology in seamless cross-border manner. So everybody will cooperate to run the same service. Convener and coordinator is the one that, in my case, is technology-wise, is infrastructure-wise. There are other conveners for the other groups or the service infrastructure and EBP. Convenor is the activity to make things running as foreseen by the member states or by the European Commission. How is designed EBSI? To give just an overview, the architecture is composed by layers, and each layer has a specific objective. So the base layer is the one really technology-wise infrastructure layer, so the one that runs really technically the blockchain, so the ledger. And on top of it, there is a layer that is very important to us, we call core service layer. What is core service layer? Is the layer that provides the service for all member states and for all activities and applications that we run on top of EBSI. So we can talk about one core service could be self-sovereign identity service. That is the new model of identity that will allow citizens to run and to self-manage, not self-issue, self-manage their own identity. But not only that, as has been anticipated by Pēteris, we have Diplomas use case where citizens will be able to get their certified qualification in a fully digital manner and share them securely through the same technology as been just again pointed out by Pēteris. It's called verifiable credentials or verifiable presentation. So what we have done is to create a set of core services that lies on top of the infrastructure that allows cross-border activities among the member states. And it's interesting the fact that this is a real incredible implementation of some European principle that we all know about. For example, the once only principle, where each document in this digital format is issued once and can be reused as many times as we want from the holder itself. But also this infrastructure may support the single digital gateway solution, as simplifies the cross-border integration among the member states entities, because you will not have entity to entity anymore, entity to entity relation, but entity to user that stays on this blockchain. Now, maybe it's too complex to explain, but this infrastructure will simplify from economical point of view and from process simplification point of view, all the communication among member state institutions. Now, as usual, as clear, because this has been built on top of our visions, EBSI is an obvious choice for cross-border application because we are by design compliant with EU regulation. So if you run on top of our infrastructure, you know that you already are compliant with EU regulation, GDPR, but not only GDPR. You have enabling services, so the core service that allows you at one step to integrate with each other member state application that may run on top, because one of the aims of the infrastructure is also to be interoperable. So we allow entities easily to talk in the same digital language and to be able to cooperate together, and defines new models of digital representation of data. As an example, the digital representation of certifications, but also, for example, the new, hopefully, IDAS identity modeling that follows what is well known as a self-sovereign identity. What is self-sovereign identity? Is a kind of identity representation that allows the holder of the identity to manage, to be self-sovereign, so to be autonomous in managing his own identity. This is very interesting because technology we're being used to rely on a central service, for example, the issued identity to verify such identity. But in our life, we don't use that model. We have our identity card in our wallet that has been issued by the Minister of Interior or whatever entity has the right to issue such card. And we share this card when we go personally in shops or in any other entity that will require our identity check. This model will physically, the one we use in everyday life before the pandemic, now a little bit less, does not require my identity card to be verified each time from the issuer, because the identity card itself represents my identity in a verifiable way. To transform this digitally, you have self-sovereign identity. So the issuer issues your identity in a verifiable way, and when you share it, you don't have to go each time through the identity issuer to verify that, but you will be able to do it as you do in your physical life and your physical wallet, but in a fully digital manner. So that is called self-sovereign identity. All these processes that we are working on and all these processes we are putting down are very helpful because they allow to make Europe a single entity in a way that each citizen, when moves across the border, will not feel any difference in its normal behavior, whether it's digital or physical, because the digital will support the physical. So why we do what we call core services, because we don't think that EBSI or EBP will build all the services in Europe, but should be an enabler for other entities, whether they're public or not, to build on top of these core services new solutions, new visions, and to implement their vision within this model. So we want to support the creation of cross-border services, so helping citizens and business to manage their own identity, education credentials, certification and print of documents, and so forth. So we want to facilitate mobility and students, for example, in students, but in citizens, professionals, and in also for businesses, because business mobility now digitally is a lot more required than before. What is next? I believe the EBSI is ready to be launched soon. Let's not make us give a specific date, but as very early in 2021. And we will launch with an initial set of use cases that will, from one side, use the core services that we were mentioning before, but also will demonstrate the value of using blockchain technology for digital transformation. We have an early adopter program that's been defined to onboard new use cases. There are several that are already onboarding, and there's events where we invite new entities or new institutions to propose their services and their visions and digital visions. And we will support them both from technical point of view with the core services and with our experience in deploying such kind of services. So I hope I'm not being too much technical on what we have done, but our vision is to transform digitally Europe and to make it have a quantum leap in transformation through this blockchain technology. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And I'm really glad that you threw back to a lot of the topics we were talking about yesterday as well, actually, in terms of EI days and so on. I know we've got a few questions coming through, and I know Max is itching to ask you about future use cases. But before we do, we're going to go to our third speaker, and that is Nena Dokuzov, who's going to tell us about why building a European blockchain services infrastructure is particularly important for member states. Nena's head of the project group for new economy and blockchain technology at the Ministry of Economic Development in Slovenia. Nena, delighted to have you with us this morning. Thank you for connecting. I'm going to give you the floor to build on what your colleagues have said. Tell us about that member state angle.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm very happy to participate today at your meeting, and I congratulate you for the completing the cycle that you had. So, blockchain technology, as Pietro was explaining before, it has the quite strong meaning here for the governments, because we can really simplify the procedures, so we can really contribute to the implementation of new technologies here, and it is very important to be in line also with the European Commission. On the other hand, we are very happy that we participated in the process of the development of European blockchain services infrastructure, because this was 2 years process, or 3 years now, from 2018. And we developed this blockchain services infrastructure together with the use cases that Pietro was explaining before in these 2 years within European Blockchain Partnership. Why it is good to have it within Slovenia, for example, we started more or less together with the European Commission in development of blockchain infrastructures and use cases. So it is very important how we can integrate this into existing information structures of the public administration, how we can simplify the projects or the processes that are relevant for the public administration. So, for example, for digital identity, we can attract the companies to invest in Slovenia. We can attract the students to come to Slovenia, also with the diploma use case. We can follow them, they can be traceable. And for the notarization use case, for example, we are planning to simplify also the EU funding processes that are being very strong in Slovenia. So maybe to link them, to link EBP with EBSI for cross-border use, the EBP helps to avoid the fragmentation of blockchain landscape by fostering the close collaboration between the member states. This was the concept of the partnership, and the partnership supports that interoperability and broad-based deployment of blockchain-based cross-border public services. It can also contribute to stronger Europe, to autonomous strategic resilience and stability, and also it is building and deploying the European blockchain services infrastructure that is in full compliance with the EU regulatory environment. It is also very important to say that we are going to develop the regulatory sandbox, where different regulatory solutions will be adopted and developed further, also in the field of standardization, so that we can really implement that interoperability that is very important for Europe. For example, if I go to the first EBSI use cases that are cross-border, it's European self-sovereign identity framework. For example, this is implementing generic self-sovereign identity capability, allowing users to create and control their own identity across borders without relying on centralized authorities, and enabling for compliance EIDAS and other regulatory framework, GDPR and so on. So then we have diplomas. Diplomas are giving control back to the citizens when managing educational credentials, and significantly reduce the verification costs for the authorities or the institutions like universities, for example, and it is improving authenticity trust. The third is notarization. Notarization is leveraging the power of blockchain to create trusted digital audit and traceability trails, and automate compliance checks in time-sensitive process and integrity. The fourth thing is that trusted data sharing. It is leveraging the blockchain technology to securely share the data among authorities in the EU, starting with EOSS VIT identification, and also the import of one-stop shop amongst customs and tax authorities. Those are four use cases that we are taking into consideration, and the further use cases that we approved last year are actually SME financing, the use case for asylum, and the use case for social security card, which will be also by the concept of interoperability widely used across Europe. So the main priorities of the European blockchain partnership is to introduce it is quite a specific network between a European Commission and the member states. What is very important is that it is the network for creation the knowledge pool. It is network for strengthening the policy orientations for blockchain in the in Europe. And also we introduced one very important topic, that we are having a co-presidency together with the European Commission and co-chairmanship with the trio of the countries that have presidency to the European Council. European policymakers can gain first-hand knowledge how the technology works, then where it can be best applied, what are the potential risks, and EBP here serves as a technological and regulatory sandbox. I would finish here. Maybe you can put some questions. I will be happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Nena. We're actually seeing plenty of questions coming in, just trying to work out what we have time to deal with right at the moment, because we only have just over 10 minutes left for this session. I think we'll go, Pēteris, there's been questions coming up about how does this interact with the Gaia X program, and where are the intersections? Could you speak a little bit about that?
I mean, very, very gladly. I mean, the Gaia X is also a part of Europe's strategic autonomy, ensuring that, of course, so while we remain and always have been an open market, also we don't have complete dependencies on other parts of the world for vital technologies. And Gaia X is aiming to ensure this competition in the cloud and the data space. As we said, our strategy is very much not to put personal data on the blockchain, both for reasons of compliance with the General Data Protection Regulation and also cost effectiveness. It's an expensive and not so effective way to store data as opposed to cloud services. So as Gaia X is developing, we have strong links between this initiative and Gaia X. They've come and spoken to us, obviously on the level of the civil servants working. We're coordinating and working together on a very regular level. Regular basis. And also when we're coming up to the funding programs like the Digital Europe program, which should be opening for its funding calls during this year, we're aiming to very much have synergies, that we're part of one European ecosystem, the European Blockchain Services Infrastructure, and hopefully the Gaia X European Cloud Federation infrastructure and ecosystem that's being built up, also the data spaces, which we hope we will be able to legally enable the utilization of smart contracts and blockchain technologies to help people and enterprises and other legal entities manage their data, and that this can be connected as well as useful. Again, we're never carried away about the hype that blockchain can do everything, or the cloud can do everything, or AI can do everything. You have to look at every application of the technology individually and see if it is meeting the needs of the institutions, the citizens, the businesses that would utilize it in this context.
Well, I think you've just name-checked all the hypes of the last decade. You didn't say cyber, but that's probably the only word left out. To be a little bit provocative, let me say that in a commercial context, we sometimes see sort of Gaia X, the idea is accused of being protectionist. Do you ever have to counter those sort of allegations, if you like, with regard to the European Blockchain Initiative? Or is it because it's public services, it's sort of exculpatory, it's not about the sort of the global commercial data system?
I mean, yes, and I mean, this is good. Constructive criticism is always useful, and in a democracy, also non-constructive criticism is how to say, more than acceptable, but needed. So, I mean, we have to defend why we're doing this. Why is there value added? The main reason is that we see the need to have a non-fragmented, interoperable network of public service blockchains across the EU. I mean, imagine if something for a diploma, you would have one system in the Netherlands, one in Belgium, one in Luxembourg, one in Ireland, one in my country, Latvia, all non-interoperable, and students or employees having to demonstrate their diplomas could only do it within their own countries. This would not be something that would meet the European needs. That's why we think that we are developing that. Again, where people see that they think that we're adding something that the private sector could do better, and where there's not a market failure, they're welcome to tell us this, and even if I didn't say they were welcome, they could do this. This is a democracy. So keep us on our toes. Let us know where we're doing, I think, things right, and also let us know where we're doing things wrong. And then maybe my final comment is, when I say something about non-constructive criticism, sometimes obviously some private operator and maybe from outside the EU says, okay, well, the state shouldn't do this. You should just buy this all from me, which is, I mean, also an alternative. But in this case, we thought that it would be a good moment for the public sector to come together. And this is a little bit like the history of the internet in that other citadel of free markets, the US, where government entities basically set up ARPANET, which became the internet.
There's nothing new in the world. I think we've heard a lot of these arguments, and you know, they are arguments. Max is itching here to ask a question. So, Max, the floor, you know.
That's super nice of you to get me back into the image in this one. Yeah, but Pēteris just said keep him on the toes. I love keeping Pēteris on his toes because there's interesting stuff coming out of there. But maybe to make a link what you said also before and what Nena presented, the use cases, and you have an initial set of use cases. So maybe a first quick comment would be interesting on the link to the upcoming EIDAS review that we have been discussing yesterday. And then maybe very practical, I don't know, Pietro, Nena, and any of you three, something on how do you go about collecting future use cases? How do you reach out there? And if you allow me a quick final point on this one is saying you've seen in the chat that the colleagues have been posting that for this conference, we will be issuing attendance certificates. And actually our own colleagues have been criticizing internally, that's what you said, constructive criticism. Why were we not able to issue these attendance certificates for this conference using your infrastructure? So what's coming next, EIDAS, and can we do it next year with your blockchain infrastructure?
I think Pietro.
Well,
Pietro,
I'll try to answer on the EIDAS.
Okay, and then we'll go to Pietro for future use cases.
Yes, exactly. I don't want to try to answer all the questions. It's interesting to hear from the other panelists. On EIDS, we're working very closely with the colleagues on the legislative instrument. We want to ensure that self-sovereign identity is a part of it. EIDS and the official government ID is essential. paying your taxes, registering for some sort of national service, et cetera, et cetera. So that has to be the basis of it. But going through our daily lives, and especially, let's say, on the internet, or reserving a field for sports or something, a tennis sport, et cetera, we're probably not using our passport or our official EID. This is where self-sovereign identity can put together all different kind of credentials for logging into Wi-Fi, for doing these kinds of things in your regular life, or moving across the internet where you need or you want to be identified, but you don't necessarily need to have the full identification of the state, but that should be the anchor for it. So this is what we're trying to ensure, that this user-friendly part of the landscape is in there, that it is a complement to the EIDS public identification. And then this is something that citizens can use all across the internet, identifying themselves without fears of their data being leaked, their private phone numbers being leaked, as recently happened in another case with a non-European identification mechanism. So this is exactly the idea. Very much holistic together with EIDS, but complementing it with the self-sovereign identity, the user controlling his or her identity through their own wallet.
Absolutely. This is something I spoke to Elena Box-Alonso about yesterday. Actually taking that GDPR data minimization principle. If someone needs to know your age, so you can perhaps buy alcohol or something, they don't also need to know your address. So it's about limiting exactly how much you share. Pietro, I said we would come back to you about future use cases. Tell us a bit about what's coming up.
Yes, thank you. And I believe it's interesting, for example, to say that I don't want to know all the future use cases, because the objective is the use cases should come with ideas of the member states, with new visions and new, let's say, needs, because the use cases should come from a need, not from the pleasure to get the use cases. Nevertheless, also Nena pointed out there are some use cases already we are working on, that, as we said about the social security number, that is not a small use case, as the aim of EBSI is also to improve mobility. And when one of our workers goes from one nation to the other, needs not to struggle with these social security, let's say, handling, just because we move to a border that doesn't exist anymore. So our aim is to remove digitally also the other borders. So my real answer would be, I don't want to know the new use cases that are coming on, but I need to invite everyone to get a new use case based on their needs. I don't know if Nena wants to add anything about that.
Well, I absolutely was going to ask Nena to very quickly add something. We only have a couple of minutes left. I would actually like to hear from Nena and also from Georges and Peter in 30 seconds or less. What is your number one use case? Nena, first over to you.
Thank you very much. My number one use case should be authentication. This is also the motivation why I started to work on blockchain, because the simplification of procedures, the visibility of users, and the visibility of or the traceability of data is very important. So this type of use case would be the first one. But for the new ones, we have some concept of early adopters program. So I hope that with that early adopters program, we will get more use cases to be put on EBSI and also developed through our process on EBP.
Thank you. Just quickly to bring back in Georges, what would be your number one use case?
Yeah, I would say I don't have I would say preferred use case, but I think it's with these new technologies that I would expect it to develop really closer to the citizen and maybe personalized public service, because we have the power to do that. It's something we can. It's out of reach now. We have seen many examples, and maybe one of my I would say violon dingue would be the proactive public service, where people could get now all the some benefits and services without even asking them, which is, I think it's now possible with the technologies we are at our disposal.
Thank you. I'm going to use that as a bit of a motto. We have the power to personalize. I think that should become a slogan for us for this event. And then finally, Peter, in the last 20 seconds of this panel, what is your personal favorite use case?
I think I'm probably repeating a bit what the colleagues talking about blockchain have said already. I think me as a European citizen, I love the use of blockchain for cross-border interoperability, being able to move from one country to another and basically just take with me the necessary information without a lot of bureaucracy. I think that's just a great help in the day-to-day life of me and of other citizens in our continent.
Absolutely, myself included. Thank you very much, gentlemen and ladies, for this really insightful session. I'm afraid we had to rattle through it really quickly. I would happily sit and talk about blockchain all day with you, but we do have other panelists to get to and other sections of this conference to get to. Thank you so much, really interesting insights, and keep up the great work.